They called me crazy when I refused to abandon my grandmother's shattered compass. My fiancé slapped it from my hands in front of everyone, choosing the smart guide over me. But when the cave-in trapped us all in darkness and their GPS devices died, only I knew the way out and what lay beyond. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed by someone you trusted, or proven right when everyone doubted you, this story will shake you. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your own "I told you so" moment, and subscribe because you won't believe how this ends. My name is Brielle, and 3 years ago, I buried my grandmother with a promise she'd been a land surveyor back in the 60s, one of the only women doing that work in the Appalachian Mountains. When she died, she left me her brass compass, the one she'd carried through decades of mapping forgotten places. The glass face was cracked, the interior foggy, and the needle had this strange way of wobbling even when you held it perfectly still. Everyone said it was broken, I said it was hers, and that was enough. But this compass wasn't just a keepsake. Tucked inside her journals were references to a place she'd surveyed during the Cold War, a hidden military bunker buried somewhere in these mountains. She'd written cryptic notes in the margins, coordinates that didn't match modern maps, and strange observations about magnetic anomalies. I became obsessed. I spent 3 years piecing together her research, applying for grants, contacting historians. This wasn't just about finding a bunker, it was about honoring her legacy, proving that her work mattered. Then I met Camden. God, he was everything I thought I wanted. Ambitious, charismatic, a documentary filmmaker with this infectious energy that made you believe anything was possible. When I told him about the bunker, his eyes lit up. 6 months into our relationship, he proposed. Not long after, he proposed something else. Turning my research into his breakthrough documentary, he promised it would feature my work, my grandmother's story, our journey together. I said yes to everything. The ring, the film, the expedition. I trusted him completely. The expedition team gathered on a September morning. 12 people, $1 million in equipment, and Camden's entire career riding on this moment. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, setting up base camp with military precision. And then there was Sutton. She was the navigation expert Camden had hired, 29 years old with a tablet full of satellite imaging, drone footage, and enough confidence to fill the entire mountain range. She had every modern tool at her disposal, and she made sure everyone knew it. I should have seen it coming on day 3. I was at the camp table studying grandmother's compass and cross-referencing it with her hand-drawn maps. The needle was doing that strange wobble, more pronounced than usual. According to her notes, that meant something significant. We were close to the bunker's magnetic signature. I was so focused I didn't notice Sutton approaching until she was standing right over me, her shadow blocking the morning sun. "Still playing with that antique?" Her voice carried across the camp, loud enough to turn heads. She gestured at her tablet with a smirk. "We have actual technology, you know. GPS accurate to 3 feet. Thermal imaging. Ground-penetrating radar. But sure, let's trust a broken compass from the Kennedy administration." People started drifting over, sensing drama. My face burned, but I kept my voice steady. "This compass tracks magnetic anomalies. The bunker's steel structure will create specific deviations that—" "Magnetic anomalies?" She actually laughed, and others joined in nervously. "Brielle, sweetheart, this isn't a treasure hunt. This is serious fieldwork." That's when Camden walked up. I should have known something was wrong when Camden didn't even look at me that morning. We'd barely spoken since the confrontation, and when the team gathered to head out, he positioned himself next to Sutton, studying her tablet like it held the secrets of the universe. I hung back, grandmother's compass heavy in my pocket. The needle was still spinning wildly, that frantic dance she'd written about in her journals. When the needle dances, you're close. But close to what? Salvation or disaster? The hike into the mountain took 4 hours. Sutton led with absolute confidence, her GPS chirping updates every few minutes. Bunker entrance 2.3 miles northeast. Everyone followed her like she was Moses parting the Red Sea. I trailed behind, watching my compass behave more erratically with every step. The needle wasn't just spinning, it was practically vibrating. I'd pull it out occasionally, trying to make sense of the pattern, and each time I did, I'd catch Sutton glancing back with that condescending smile. We entered the mountain through a collapsed mine entrance, the kind of place that screamed danger to anyone paying attention. The air changed immediately. Cooler, damper, with this metallic taste that coated your tongue. Sutton's voice echoed off the stone walls. Bunker entrance, 400 meters ahead. But my compass was telling a different story. The needle had gone into overdrive, spinning so fast it blurred into a silver disc. And there was something else, a side passage to our left, barely visible in the shadows, with fresh air currents flowing from it. I could feel the breeze on my face. "There's airflow coming from that passage," I said, pointing. My voice sounded small in the vast chamber we'd entered. "We should check." "Brielle." Camden's tone could have frozen lava. "We're following the GPS, the technology that actually works. If you can't handle that, wait outside." Sutton didn't even turn around. "The bunker's straight ahead. My equipment doesn't lie." But my compass did something then that made my blood run cold. The needle stopped. After hours of spinning, it just stopped dead, pointing behind us. Pointing directly at that side passage I'd noticed. I remembered grandmother's words, written in shaky handwriting in the margins of her last journal entry, "When the dance ends, turn around." "We need to leave," I said, louder this time. "Right now, this isn't right." Sutton finally turned, and the look she gave me was pure contempt. "Because your broken toy says so? Camden, can you please control your fiancé? Some of us are trying to work." The team had stopped now, and I felt every eye on me. Camden's face had gone red, that vein in his forehead pulsing the way it did when he was truly angry. He took 3 steps toward me, and for a moment, I thought he might actually grab me. "I swear to God, Brielle, if you embarrass me one more time..." That's when the mountain decided to speak for itself. The crack was so loud it felt like the earth splitting open. Sutton had set up drilling equipment against the far wall, and the team had just activated it when the ceiling began to fracture. I watched it happen in slow motion. A spider web of breaks spreading across the stone above us, dust raining down, and then chunks of rock the size of cars began to fall. Someone screamed. Emergency lights flickered. The air filled with choking dust so thick I couldn't see my own hands. When the rumbling stopped, the silence was somehow worse than the noise. I was on my hands and knees, coughing, my lungs burning. Slowly, people started calling out names, doing a head count. Everyone was alive, but the entrance we'd come through was gone, completely buried under tons of rock. We were trapped in this chamber with no way out, and the air already felt thinner. Sutton was frantically tapping her tablet, her face illuminated by the screen's glow in the dim emergency lighting. "No signal. The GPS is... It's not working. None of it's working." Her voice cracked on the last word. She tried her phone, her backup communicator, everything all dead. Something in this mountain was jamming every piece of electronic equipment we had. Camden's expensive cameras were crushed under rubble. Sutton's $1 million navigation system was nothing but a useless brick. And slowly, one by one, every person in that chamber turned to look at me. I was holding grandmother's compass, and the needle was pointing steadily toward the side passage, the one I'd tried to warn them about. The emergency lights cast long shadows across Camden's face as he walked toward me. He'd never looked at me like that before, like I was the only person in the world who mattered, like every word I'd ever said suddenly carried weight. His voice came out quiet, almost broken. "Bree? Can that compass actually help us?" I looked down at the brass instrument in my palm, its needle pointing steady and true toward the darkness of that side passage. Part of me wanted to say nothing. Part of me wanted to let them sit in the fear they'd created, let them feel what it was like to be dismissed and ignored. But I'm not built that way, and grandmother didn't raise me to abandon people, even when they'd abandoned me first. "This broken piece of junk?" I said, my voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "This embarrassing antique that isn't real technology?" Sutton pushed forward, her confidence crumbling like the walls around us. "Brielle, please, we're running out of air. If you know something, anything. I let the silence stretch. Let them understand what it felt like to need something desperately from someone you'd treated like garbage. Finally, I spoke, and my voice echoed through the chamber. My grandmother didn't just map these mountains. She surveyed them for the military during the Cold War. This compass wasn't broken. It was modified, custom-built to track the bunker's magnetic signature through layers of rock and interference. She left me her journals, her notes, her life's work. And I spent 3 years learning to read them, understanding them, honoring them. This compass has been leading us to the bunker this entire time. You just refused to listen. Camden reached for me and I stepped back. Why didn't you tell us? You slapped it out of my hands, Camden. You called me an embarrassment in front of everyone. You chose her expertise over 3 years of my research because her tools were shinier and newer, so don't you dare ask me why I didn't tell you. A team member spoke up from the back, voice shaking. Can you get us out or not? I looked at the compass, then at the side passage. The needle was unwavering now, and I could still feel that faint breeze of fresh air. I can try, but I'm in charge now. No questions, no second guessing, no technology to override me. And Camden? I held out my hand. Give me your backup camera, the small one in your vest pocket. What? Why? Because if I'm navigating us out of here, I'm telling this story, not you. My terms, or I walk into that passage alone. His hand shook as he pulled out the camera and placed it in my palm. Sutton opened her mouth to protest, but another team member cut her off, almost shouting, "Let her lead or we die here arguing." I turned toward the passage, compass in one hand, camera in the other, and started walking. Behind me, I heard the shuffle of feet, the sound of people gathering their courage to follow someone they'd spent days mocking. The passage was narrow, forcing us into single file, and the walls seemed to press in from both sides. My grandmother's journal entry played in my head like a mantra. Follow the solid needle through the serpent's throat. Sutton's voice came from somewhere behind me. This passage is too narrow. It can't be the right way. We should go back and then stay here, I said without turning around. I kept walking, and I heard her footsteps resume after a moment of hesitation. The passage twisted and turned, sometimes so tight we had to move sideways. Another tremor shook the mountain, and rocks fell around us. Someone cried out, but the compass never wavered. We came to a fork, 2 passages splitting off into darkness. My instinct screamed to go left. It looked wider, safer. The compass pointed right, into a passage that looked like it might collapse any second. Sutton's voice was pleading now. Brielle, left looks more stable. The structural integrity. Trust the tech, Sutton. I went right, and the team followed. Behind us, 30 seconds later, we heard the crash of the left passage collapsing in on itself. If we'd gone that way, we'd be buried. Nobody questioned me after that. The passage opened into a sealed corridor, and I knew immediately we'd made it. Military markings on the walls, Cold War-era warning signs, emergency lighting running on ancient backup generators. My compass started spinning again. We were inside the magnetic field now, surrounded by the very thing it had been designed to find. And there, at the end of the corridor, stood massive blast doors with a manual override still intact. I placed my hand on the wheel and pushed. Daylight had never felt so beautiful. The blast doors groaned open, and September sunshine poured into that Cold War tomb like liquid gold. We stumbled out onto the opposite side of the mountain, gulping fresh air, and I realized we'd traveled through the entire range. The bunker had been hidden in plain sight for 60 years, and Grandmother's compass had led us straight through its heart to safety. I stood there, holding that brass instrument up to the sun, and I swear I felt her with me. The rescue came within hours. Helicopters, emergency crews, news vans creating a carnival of chaos at the mountain's base. Apparently we'd been missing for 18 hours, and the story was already breaking. Expedition team trapped in cave-in feared dead. Except we weren't dead. We were very much alive, and I had footage that would change everything. Camden's main cameras were destroyed, buried under tons of rock in that collapsed chamber, but my camera, His backup had captured it all: the humiliation at base camp, his hand slapping the compass away, Sutton's condescending smirk, the cave-in, and most importantly, the navigation, every moment where I'd led them through impossible choices, where the compass had proven itself again and again while their technology failed. A production assistant grabbed the camera from me for safekeeping, and within 6 hours, that footage was everywhere. Geologist uses grandmother's vintage compass to save expedition team. The headlines wrote themselves. My phone, once I got signal, exploded with messages. News requests, interview offers, book deals. But the messages from Camden kept coming too, each one more desperate than the last. "Bree, we need to talk. Please answer." "I can explain. I love you." I found him 3 days later at the hospital where they were treating minor injuries. He was in the hallway, and he looked like he hadn't slept since we'd emerged from that mountain. When he saw me, his face crumpled with relief. He reached for my hands, and I let him take them, just for a moment. "Bree, I was wrong. I was so incredibly wrong about everything. The compass, your research, Sutton. God, I was such an idiot. But we can fix this. We can still get married, make the documentary together, tell the story the right way, your way. I promise, it'll be different." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I was staring at a stranger. This was the man who'd promised to honor my work, then humiliated me in front of our entire team, who'd chosen someone else's expertise over 3 years of my dedication, who'd only seen my value when his own survival depended on it. I pulled my hands away and twisted the engagement ring off my finger. It had cost him 3 months' salary, and he'd proposed on a beach at sunset, and I'd thought it meant forever. I pressed it into his palm and closed his fingers around it. "You didn't choose me when it was easy, Camden. You chose me when you had no other choice. That's not love. That's survival instinct." My voice didn't shake. "I navigated us to safety. Now I'm navigating away from you." Behind him, I saw Sutton approaching, her confident stride reduced to something hesitant and small. "Brielle, I wanted to apologize. In my professional opinion, I should have listened." "Your professional opinion almost buried us alive. Sutton mine brought us home. I don't need your apology. I need you to remember this feeling the next time you dismiss someone because their tools don't cost enough." I walked away from both of them, carrying grandmother's compass, and I didn't look back. 6 months later, my book hit the shelves. The Broken Compass: How Traditional Knowledge Saved Modern Lives. I became a keynote speaker, traveling to universities and conferences, teaching people that old doesn't mean obsolete and different doesn't mean wrong. The bunker became a protected historical site, and I led the preservation effort, finally giving grandmother's work the recognition it deserved. A documentary was made, but this time it was my story, told in my voice, on my terms. Camden's career never recovered. Turns out humiliating your fiancé on camera and nearly killing your team doesn't look good to investors. Last I heard, he was shooting corporate training videos in Ohio. Sutton got a desk job with a GPS company. I heard she's very good at staying in one place now. And me? I visit grandmother's grave every year on the anniversary of that expedition. I bring flowers and I bring her compass. Professionally restored now, but with all her modifications preserved, I tell her about the speaking engagements, the students I've mentored, the young women who've written to me saying I inspired them to trust their instincts even when the world says they're wrong. Camden wanted a documentary about finding a bunker. Instead, he got a masterclass in karma. Sutton wanted to prove technology beats tradition. Instead, she proved that arrogance beats common sense every time. And me? I proved that being underestimated is only painful until the moment you prove everyone wrong. My grandmother's compass wasn't broken. It was specialized, unique, misunderstood, just like me. And when the world fell apart, when all their expensive technology failed, that broken compass was the only thing that worked. To everyone who's ever been called crazy, outdated, or embarrassing for trusting their gut, keep that compass close. Your moment is coming. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Comment below. What's your broken compass? The thing others doubt but you know works? Subscribe because next week I'm sharing the story of a woman whose useless art degree saved her entire company from bankruptcy. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for being here. Trust your compass. And remember, the person who laughs at your tools has never needed to be saved by them.